the update on the task force to support that international students who were defrauded by unscrupulous immigration consultants. Please welcome to Minister Miller.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. Sonia, thank you so much for welcoming me to, for the second time in my tenure as Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, to your neck of the woods, and to Ruby and Shafkat for being here as well. Dr. Morrison, thank you for welcoming for this beautiful institution, and we know how responsible you are because you didn't let me touch any of the expensive equipment, which was very well thought out. And thank you as well to Sonia and Janet for acknowledging the original peoples of this land. I'm here today to provide you with an update on our work regarding the review of the International Student Program and some of the reforms that we'll be implementing as a result. As you're likely aware, the use of fraudulent admissions letters has been a major concern for my department this year and continues to pose a serious threat to the integrity of our student program. I want to stress this point. International students are not the problem. They come here with hopes and dreams, and they are essential to building this country and the future and the ambition that we set ourselves for a country. I've met with a number of international students today, Praneet, for example, who spoke so eloquently about the precarious position that she's faced in her journey to permanent residency and the anxiety and fear that that's created. That is magnified when we have a system that has lost its integrity and is subject to, at sometimes, some of the worst aspects of fraud. Starting by the end of the year, we're taking steps to prevent this type of fraud by introducing an enhanced system of actually verifying the letters of acceptance directly with post-secondary institutions for all overseas study permit applications. Canada is a major destination and a top destination for international students, thanks to our open, welcoming communities and high-quality educational institutions. Between January and August of this year, we've received over 608,000 study permit requests while processing over 600,000 of these in the same period. International students, as I mentioned, bring a lot to Canada, benefiting campus life and Canada's multicultural spirit in communities across the country. By being open to international students, we benefit from new ideas, ways of learning, and researching coming into our post-secondary system. And clearly, this movement of students to Canada brings with it significant economic advantages as well, with international students contributing well over $20 billion to our GDP annually. Beaucoup de ces étudiants découvrent notre pays, veulent y rester et remplir les postes vacants lorsqu'ils obtiennent leur diplôme. Chaque année, des milliers d'anciens étudiants étrangers remplissent des conditions requises et font la transition vers un séjour permanent. Cependant, nous devons disposer d'un système fiable, équitable et efficace. Nous voulons que tous les Canadiens sachent que nous agissons pour préserver l'intégrité de notre système d'immigration. The issue of letter of acceptance fraud really came to the forefront earlier this year. Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada and Canada Border Services Agency investigations were already underway when in June, fraudulent letters of admissions were reported. The investigation identified nearly 1,550 study permits applications initially connected to fraudulent letters. In most of those cases, the fraud was detected and the application was refused. In approximately 450 of the remaining cases, fraud wasn't identified during the processing and study permits were issued. In some cases, people have shown up at the doorsteps of institutions to find out that their hope has been dashed. When media reports surfaced, a number of international students came forward as victims, not participants in the submission of the fraudulent documents. And I'd also say that because of the precarious nature of some international students, there is a hesitancy to come forward. And that only magnifies the fact that this could very well be the tip of the iceberg. To ensure that genuine students were supported, an IRCC task force was struck to review the facts of cases for individuals once the Immigration and Refugee Board had completed its proceedings. Pour identifier les étudiants qui sont des étudiants véritables, L'examen du groupe de travail cherche à savoir si les étudiants se sont inscrits à un établissement, s'ils ont terminé leurs études, s'ils étaient conscients des stratagèmes frauduleux, s'ils avaient des liens avec des activités criminelles ou s'ils avaient fait d'autres fausses déclarations dans leur dossier de candidature. Of the approximately 450 cases, there were 285 of interest to the task force, and as of mid-October, the IRCC task force had reviewed 103 cases and determined that 63 students were genuine students. In 40 of these cases, these individuals were found not to be genuine students. For those students found to be genuine students, 30 were issued temporary resident visas. Most of the remaining cases are still before the IRB, and the task force will intervene where appropriate once adjudicative processes are concluded. As we continue to review the International Student Program, I can also confirm that we'll move ahead with a new recognized institution framework. We've been actively engaged with stakeholders, including Sheridan College, post-secondary education associations, and learning institutions on this concept, and we'll continue to refine it. We plan to implement the recognized institution framework in time for the fall semester of 2024. The framework would recognize those institutions whose international students benefit from top-class services, housing, and other supports. Our goal here is to punish the bad actors, make sure that they are held accountable, and reward the good actors who provide adequate outcomes for the success of international students. Such institutions that are recognized could benefit from, for example, faster student permit application processing destined for the students destined to their school. And as we move towards implementing it next year, additional details will be shared to fully explain how institutions would become recognized and what benefits that would bring. I would also caution people who have demanded for a one-stop solution, that we put a cap on things, that we sort of bring down the hammer on an ecosystem that is rife with perverse incentives. I've met enough people in this field to know that the lived experience of international students is too complex to come up with a simple formula and simply have the federal government stomp in and pretend that it has all the solutions. My job is to solve for fraud and to make sure that my department and the federal government is doing its job. But I do want to add that the accreditation, the designation of designated learning institutions is made by provinces. And they have a primary role in this, in making sure that those institutions are doing their jobs. We have a challenge in Ontario in particular, but it is not the only province that has faced challenges. But we need to do it together. And the federal government is coming forward and opening its arms to our provincial partners, territorial partners, to make sure we all do our jobs properly. If that job can't be done, the federal government is prepared to do it. But for right now, we need the provinces in particular, and in the case of Ontario where we are, to look at the Auditor General report that was issued in 2021 with respect to public and private colleges and work on implementing some of those recommendations. They are key to the vitality of the people that I spoke to today. They are key to the integrity of the system, and they are key to what Janet so aptly said is responsible growth. I'm not here to shut down a business model that makes sense, but what we are seeing in the ecosystem is one that has been chasing after short-term gain without looking at the long-term pain, and we need to reverse that trend. But it will take time, and a simple solution is not the one that we're presenting today. We will gradually move into it and make sure that we do our job first as a federal government, but work with our provincial counterparts to make sure that that job is done in a way that keeps international students like the ones I spoke to today at the heart of every decision-making process. Finally, I'd add, because this, and I won't add too much detail to this because it is a work in progress, we also want to signal our plans to introduce reforms to the post-graduation work permit program. We know that there is an arc to this. People don't just come to the country to study and necessarily to leave. Some do, but we know that this is also a pathway to permanent residency and Canadian citizenship eventually, but it has to go through a program that makes sure that we are incentivizing the trades that are in such great need in this country. We have a labor shortage in this country, and it cannot be filled domestically. That is the reality of the aging population that we have, and it's the reality that we need to face in a responsible fashion if we are to grow our gross domestic product responsibly, but also if we were to have all the services that all the aging population expects us to have in a country like Canada. The program that I'm speaking about hasn't been reviewed in a decade and has grown considerably in parallel with the increasing number of international students in Canada. In the coming months, we'll do continued work to make sure that we actually align this to the arc that I was speaking about, to make sure that someone that is coming here for studying can get a job and can move into perhaps a pathway to permanent residency. So I would expect to announce more details in the coming months on that particular piece of the reform. I'd also add that in the last year we've brought online new technologies that assist with study permit renewals, that use an automated tool to review applications and provide a summary to case officers for a final decision. I stress on that point that the final decision always remains with a human and case officers. This has improved our processing time, and it's really something we need to do in the context of the 21st century. Our immigration system is reliable and will continue to act to prevent fraud by criminals and unscrupulous actors. I remain committed to supporting all genuine students who came here with hopes and dreams, hopefully doing what we need to do better in matching supply and demand. That's why we're acting here today, to support hardworking people and ensure our systems are secure and effective. I can't do it, we can't do it, the provinces can't do it without people like Dr. Morrison, without institutions like Sheridan College, and all the ones that are essential to the future and our responsible growth in this country. So I know perhaps some of you have questions. I'll leave it at that and simply want to thank you for taking the time to come here today. Merci.